welcome. And let's see. So Debbie, I don't have a regular folder too. This is my, I'm really sorry. The first file for our consideration is property tax exemption for the, no, that's not it. Sorry, it is a. So in your packet, you have Senate joint resolution, but it should be Senate file 3. Okay, so Senate file 3 is a liquor license increase. Yeah. I think we may have a little. Oh yeah, this goes up on the floor and this is here. But our first bill is not this bill. It is Senate file 3, not Senate joint resolution 3. You see, this is a different bill. So we're gonna need that other bill.
Senate file 3.
Yeah.
I got it here on the computer if you want.
We all got it on the computer, but we don't have enough of them. So with, we'll let them work on that. Okay, everybody, what we'll do is we'll go to the next one. And then when we get copies of the bill, we'll come back to Senate File 3. So the next file, we're going to do the bar and grill license, which is Senate File 13. And we're going to take it ahead of the tavern license, which is Senate File 12. So Senate File 13, bar and grill liquor license amendments. Mr. Montoya, do you want to help us with this one? Would you be willing? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Montoya.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, Tom Montoya, Wyoming Department of Revenue, Liquor Division. Mr. Chairman, I also handed out a handout.
No. I think we've got it. Can I share with you, Senator Landon? Thank you. Keep going. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 13, what this particular bill does is to increase the number of bar and grill licenses over a 10-year period. And eventually what it will end up doing is after 10 years, they will become unlimited. If you remember in the interim, it was actually, the reason they were going to go to unlimited was to completely do away with the restaurant license and just convert all restaurant licenses to bar and grill. But the committee decided to keep restaurant licenses in. But the bar and grill license would still, over a 10-year period, just increase gradually for both cities and for counties. And that's why I gave you this handout, because when you look at what happens on page 2, page 3, page 4, really it's just population formula doing those gradual increases. But when you see it in writing, it's pretty confusing. So if you look at this chart here, I'll explain how this works. This is just an abbreviation of the census report. And as you know, I've handed out the census report to the committee for years. And basically what it does is it just puts this population formula into numbers. So on the first page there, for instance, you'll see Albany County with a population of 31,407. That was the population number for the 2020 census that we get from A&I, who gets it from the federal government. So in the town of Laramie, there was 31,407. Currently, as of today, in current law, they have 10 bar and grill liquor licenses authorized. They have 7 of those issued, and they have 3 available. Now, what this bill proposes is that in 23, the first bump this year, starting on July 1, that number will go up to 14 for the city of Laramie. That's an increase of 4 licenses for the city. In July 1 of 28, that number would jump to 18. That's an additional 4 licenses. And of course, in 33, that's when they become unlimited for all bar and grill licenses. And if you see the same thing for the counties, now the same number for the county population in this bill was at 75, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, 7,500. That number didn't change. That's what's in current statute. So you won't see a huge increase in county licenses over time. There will be some counties, like Teton County, which has more population, but they will go unlimited in 33 as well. And that's really all this bill does, Mr. Chairman, is this is just what all the writing is increases the bar and grill over time.
Okay, questions from the committee for Mr. Montoya? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to be clear, the basis of the population is always on the official census, or is it updated annually based on also federal numbers? Thank you.
Mr. Montoya.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barlow, what statutes require is that we do on the 10-year census, and then we will do at the 5-year mark, which is an estimate, and we get those numbers again from the feds, who give it to the Department of A&I, and they give it to us. So we update them every 5 years.
Okay, anybody else questions for Mr. Montoya? All right, thank you, Mr. Montoya.
You bet.
Would anybody else like to testify on this bill? Mr. Mosier. You're not alone, Mr. Mosier.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Committee on...
By law, oh, my lord. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Mosier.
Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association, joined by my brethren and sister of the Wyoming Association of Municipalities on this bill. We support this legislation. To give a quick background, the bar and grill license was invented back in 2007. It was in response to us and WHAM continually kicking the snot out of each other over what to do with license formulas. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Montoya and I were called in by the House Chairman of Corporations, and he said, find something that will work. And so that bill in 07, and one of my favorite bills, it passed completely unamended, with everybody supporting it, from realtors to WHAM to everybody else. The understanding at that time is that we would incrementally over time increase the number to give time for cities to adapt, law enforcement to adapt. And so in 2011, so 4 years later, we increased the number again, once again with everybody on board. 2017, we increased the number again. There was a little more debate over how many to do at that time, but we ended up on a solution. This is the final step, if you will, of that evolution, because this, as Mr. Montoya mentioned, would completely remove the cap over time. When we came up with this bill, or this concept, with a cooperation of our allies, part of it is the growth sector in our industry is in on-premise with food. On-premise establishments by themselves, just serving alcohol with no food, packaged liquor, are pretty much dying because people don't drink like that anymore. And so the bar and grill was to address, and still addresses, where the growth pattern really is, and that's in bars with restaurants. So that being said, it's been a natural process. We've deregulated a lot of liquor licenses. Some of you might remember we removed the cap on the number of restaurant licenses a few years back. We've added ski resorts, rodeos. I mean, it's a gradual process without adding too much shock to the system itself. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to answer any questions, but I ask you to support this bill. It's a good bill, and I think everybody's on board.
Okay, questions for Mr. Mosier? Any questions for Mr. Mosier? All right, Mr. Mosier, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
I think the committee, though, is interested in the general concept of this kind of tied to the second bill, the other bill, the tavern and entertainment, and wondering if there's not a way to limit that bill and perhaps roll it into this bill. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on that note, current statute requires the applicant or renewal for application to differentiate between food service sales and alcohol and malt beverage sales as they apply. So would it be, is it probable that they have sales that do not fall under one of those two categories? Thank you.
Mr. Mosher.
Mr. Chairman, yes. And without putting the cart before the horse, I think the concept of the other bill, if it's narrowly, for example, I'll just throw out a couple examples. When we did ski resorts, we included that in resort language, and we specified ski resorts. I mean, you don't just leave it completely broad. You address what you're addressing. Same was true with rodeos. We didn't say entertainment, we said rodeos with minimum seating capacity. And that being said, if it was carved into bar and grill rather than being an independent license, I think it would probably be more tenable and have more control. That is not what the next bill does, but that would be a way to approach it, Mr. Chairman.
So we're kind of hoping that witnesses will address this bill, of course, and we can pass this bill firmly in this ground and then take up the next bill. But if we could speculate if there's a way to make a connection that might make it easier on everybody and make more sense. So
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. There's always a solution. We've been doing this for a lot of years, and we've always found somewhere in between. But the concern we have is we would rather use sniper rifles than a tactical nuke, and creating a new type of license. Sorry about the nuke reference, Senator Boner.
he prefers strategic.
Missileers are so sensitive. But I think that can be addressed, whether it's in this bill or whether it's something else. But if there's a loophole, people would find it. You need to nail down what you're looking for and what you want, rather than just keeping a broad open door.
All right.
I hope that helps, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else from Mr. Mosher? Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Mayor Collins, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Mayor Collins from the city of Cheyenne. Welcome back to the capital city.
Thank you, sir.
I am speaking in favor of the bill. Mr. Mosher and Wham and myself, we've all worked together to try to figure out a way to add more bar and grill licenses for our cities. I was on the city council back in the early 2000s and in 2006 when we created the restaurant, when you guys created the restaurant liquor license. We supported the idea because we were out of liquor licenses, and frankly, folks in Cheyenne wanted an Olive Garden. We couldn't get it because they require a bar waiting area, and that required at that time a retail liquor license. And without that license, they just wouldn't come. And so we finally got the bar and grill license, and they came, and we have now 14 of those kinds of restaurants here in Cheyenne. History has shown, at least from my perspective, this has been a very successful project. We have 89 restaurants now across the state of Wyoming who are using this license, and I think helping with the quality of life and the visitor appeal to folks who come. We also have 11 communities that are completely sold out of restaurant or bar and grill licenses, 15 that have one license available to them. So you'll see towns like Du Bois, Saratoga, and Cody who are sold out, as well as Sheridan, Cheyenne, and Casper. So from the very smallest towns to our larger cities. When we came into this session, my personal goal was to just get rid of the formula at all. Why would we want to limit restaurants? That didn't make sense. But I think this proposal adds enough licenses for us right away. It adds more 5 years from now, and in 10 years, it completely gets rid of the formula. I believe that that's enough for our immediate needs, and I think it's a fair compromise, and I very much speak in favor of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions for the mayor? Thank you. Mr. Fraser, did you want to address us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, David Fraser, Executive Director, Wyoming Association of Municipalities. And I don't know that I have a lot to add on this issue other than to thank Mr. Mosher for working with us on this. As has been indicated by these two previous speakers, we're in agreement on this bill. As pertains to the other bill, and would certainly follow your lead, but hadn't intended to speak to that here, but if you're talking about some kind of marriage between the bills, I think it'll be important to have a discussion about the reason for the need for the tavern license, and so that any marrying of the bills we did would be aimed at addressing that. So I'll follow your lead if you want to finish this bill and get into that, or however you want to do that. But I think it'll be important to be able to have a discussion of the goal, of our goal with the tavern license, so that we can make sure that so hopefully the committee can aim at that.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fraser, it's good to see you again. It's good to be back on the committee. This has always been one of the tougher areas for me to get my arms around. And boy, does it generate a lot of emotion. So the question in the back of my mind last night when I was looking through this legislation was, what happens as we increase those licenses? And I'm looking at the mayor too. Does it almost automatically push somebody off the cliff on the other side? Or has it been shown that all can survive? It just feels like we continue to add more and more licenses. That's like slicing the pizza more and more times, and you get smaller and smaller pieces of pizza. And I wonder about the survival of all of the businesses you already have in your municipalities out there. And at what point do we jeopardize that? Those things are all in my mind. Hope that makes sense, and can you comment on that?
Mr. Fraser, please.
Thank you. I want to be respectful, of course, thank you, through the chairman. Thank you for the question, Senator. I do appreciate our businesses that are here. It's interesting, we had a speaker at our last conference that wrote a book called 13 Ways to Ruin Your Community. and it's a great book. I can provide you a copy. But he goes through kind of, it's written very tongue-in-cheek, but one of the chapters is eliminate competition. One of the best ways to ruin your community is to eliminate competition. And especially, and it's talking about towns, not states, but it kind of recognizes that in a small town, you tend to not want to, you tend to feel bad for Hank if his hardware store has a new competing hardware store come in, and you might have the instinct to try to keep the other store out. But of course, if you want to have a vital economy, you've got to have that competition. You've got to let new players in. And I think with this bill, and more particularly and even more particularly with the next one, and you'll hear testimony about some business on the next one. You'll hear some testimony about some businesses who've been turned away because there just wasn't a license for them. I think that, as I said to the interim committee, we spent a lot of time in front of the legislature asking for tools for economic development so we can go try to find somebody. And at the same time, we have this case where we have people coming to us that we can't say yes to. And so I think that, while I do recognize and appreciate our existing businesses, I think that competition is good for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Landon.
Appreciate that. And Mr. Fraser, thank you. That's really the conversation, and you hit some nails on the head right there. Appreciate that perspective. Thanks.
Anybody else? So I think this might be a good time for me to do my disclaimer that I always do on liquor bills. I think everybody probably knows, but they're sure there are people that don't. But I do have a liquor license. It's a resort liquor license. I have it's actually leased out, but it's a hotel with a conference center and a little bar and restaurant. And I will declare a conflict on the liquor bills. I want you to know that. We're gonna have a good, fair hearing, but I just need people to know that. And speaking to your point, I guarantee you on a Friday afternoon, there's only a few places that the people go to have a drink after work, and whether it's called a restaurant liquor license or a full retail liquor license, and I could use proper names because you all been to Lander, and we just roll down the street. But we do compete with those folks, and, everybody struggles for the same apple, and as Mr. Mosier said, kind of the go out to get a drink business has declined considerably. And, it's a sign of the times, it's probably a healthy sign of the times. But, so there'll be a conflict on the bill, but to think that these licenses aren't connected, in my mind, would be kind of naive. All right. Who else would like to address the committee? Mr. Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chris Brown representing Wyoming Hospitality and Travel Coalition. We stand in full support of the bill, both the aspect of increasing the number of bar and grill licenses available and the eventual elimination of the cap on bar and grill licenses. Mr. Chairman, it would be our preference to keep the two bills separate. We do not have a standing position on the next bill, the tavern bill, as we have members on both sides of that discussion. And from our perspective, merging the two would take a seemingly universal agreed upon bill with needed solutions in this space and unnecessarily complicate it. And so we hope that you'll keep the two separate with the hopes that this bill will be able to move forward. I'm not sure, on the next bill, but like I say, we don't have a standing position due to numerous opinions throughout the industry, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to address the committee on this bill? Anybody online? So we have no more testimony on Senate File 13. With the committee's indulgence, how about if we just leave that one open for right now? We do have hard copies of the first bill, Senate File 3, which is retail liquor license fees. How about if we just work that one next, and then we'll come back, we'll hear testimony on 12, and then we'll sit and think about it all for a bit. That's permissible. Okay, the next, we're just going to set that aside. We're going to take it up this meeting though, so don't go too far. We'll hear the first bill that was scheduled for us, which was Senate File 3, retail liquor license fees. Who's going to help us with that one? Is that somebody from WHAM maybe? It's a really simple bill. After July 1st, 2023, the licensing authority gets a more flexibility, and it's within a range. So how about Mr. Mosier?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, once again, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association, joined once again by my compatriots from the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. We support this legislation. Essentially what it does, they're with full retail liquor licenses, not in the vast majority of communities, but in a significant number of the bigger communities, there's a blue sky value that has, and so you end up when a full retail comes available every 5 years, as was asked earlier, or a number of them, there's kind of a feeding frenzy because everybody wants that golden ticket. This allows the cities to make some money, which we're always in favor of because we like well-funded cities because they're happy cities that way. And also, I think it helps kind of narrow down the focus of who really wants that license. And I could get into why full retail licenses are done the way they are, but what it allows the cities to do is make more money. Now, the one thing, and I have handed out this amendment, and Senator Scott's not here, he's the one that brought it up in the interim. When you passed this bill out of the legislature, there was an amendment to remove fees, but Senator Scott was right, we removed too much. And so the way it reads, and Mr. Montoya can nod his head if he agrees, the way it reads right now, it would eliminate the municipality and county's ability to assess an annual fee, which my retailers would be fine with, but they probably wouldn't. So the amendment I've given you all, and I think everybody got a copy.
Actually, we're kind of,
I didn't do it as a handout because I thought Senator Scott would be there, but I have enough for the committee, I think. But what it does is reinstitute their ability to assess the annual license fee.
Why don't you get them handed out to the committee, and we'll take that up a bit later.
Yeah, got any spare copies? I've got 3
It's
copies.
really helpful when we have handouts in committee, that we have plenty for the public too. 'Cause the
I'm
public's
sorry.
here interested on this bill.
Perfect. We got plenty. I thought it would be disseminated. I apologize.
Okay, so anybody in the public that wants to get a copy of that, please do, and the committee that's coming.
This proposal, Mr. Chairman, was vetted by the Wyoming Association of Municipalities and the Liquor Division. We made sure everybody was on board first. But it's just basically a cleanup to return the original intent of the bill, which is the initial fee, without eliminating or changing the ability of the regular assessment of the annual fee. And as I mentioned, Senator Scott caught it back then, but we didn't know how to address it at the time, and we'd mentioned in committee that we'd have an amendment if it needed fixed. So there's your amendment.
Thank you, we'll take that up in a bit. Any questions for Mr. Mosier? Any questions? Oh, go ahead, Senator Landon.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but just real quickly, Mr. Mosier, so the section in this bill that defines how much that license can be, can you help us a little bit, those of us who were not here during the interim, and what that was really all about? We've always kind of hesitated to put amounts in statutes because we end up having to come back every couple years and deal with it. Can you help me with that? Just catch me up a little bit?
Mr. Mosier.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, great question. Basically, the value of a license is what people are willing to pay for it. And like I said, in most communities, you have licenses available. In those communities that they aren't, oftentimes it's really difficult to ascertain the actual value because they're sold with the business proper. And so I get rerouted questions all the time about value of liquor license, and it's a completely arbitrary amount. My understanding, and my friends at WHAM can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the way this is said is if the city of Cheyenne thinks they can get X amount, they can ask X amount. So it's an arbitrary figure. In some cases, it's cyclical. As I mentioned before, on-premise is not doing real well, so licenses, or when you have a bunch of licenses, you'd asked about licenses. In Cheyenne in 1978, we had 47,000 people and 43 licenses, and now we've got 94. So there's a lot more licenses, so it just depends on the cycle, depends on how the economy's doing. So it is an arbitrary figure. I was speaking to one of you yesterday about that very thing. So if the city of Cheyenne feels they can get 250,000, God love you. If you can get 150, that's good too, because I think what it does is it keeps, like I said, the feeding frenzy away. Does that answer your question, Senator Landon?
That helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for Mr. Mosier? Okay, let's go to Mayor Collins.
Yeah,
You're elected.
You go. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
You don't sell liquor, but you're elected.
I
so
do
you
not
can
sell
second.
liquor, sir. I am a small businessman, though. Just a couple of thoughts. First, when we talk to folks who currently have retail liquor licenses, many of them, if not most, bought those on the secondary market. So they bought them at a higher price, well above the $1,500 that the municipality, Cheyenne, sells it to them for. For many of them, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've paid for their licenses. They tell me that it's unfair that somebody gets a new license and wins that lottery and gets a license for such a big discount. For the municipalities, we sell the license for $1,500 and it instantly becomes worth many, many times more. Right before Christmas, I signed our latest retail liquor license. We got one at the census when we crossed that 63,000 mark. The applicant paid $1,500 for it. When he walked out of the room, it was worth someplace between, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000 from what I'm told on the street it's worth. It seems to me the purpose of a liquor license is to sell liquor. And if there's so much profit to be made in a retail liquor license in that process, the taxpayers may be able to get some of that, through the money going back to the city or the county or the issuing agency. So this bill allows the issuing authority to set the initial price of the liquor license. The market price of liquor license it'll be wildly different from town to town. I mean, Jackson compared to Hewlett, I think there's a huge difference in the valuation there. Laramie versus Meeteetse, I see that difference. And rather than being prescriptive in the pricing, this allows flexibility in the marketplace. The base price of a license would still be $300 for the smaller towns that makes sense, but leaves the governing body some flexibility in some of the larger, more in-demand places. Thank you.
Okay, questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Fraser, Executive Director, Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I just want to kind of clarify one thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and that is that our goal coming into this wasn't to make more money, although, you know, that's, nobody objects to that side effect. But what we saw was, our real desire, which we were aiming at initially, in which this bill makes progress toward, is that these not be a commodity, that they be a license, not a commodity. And as Mr. Mosier indicated, the mayor reflected the same. You know, sometimes you got to weed through who's applying, because you want this to be a liquor license, not just a commodity that somebody's trying to seek to win. So we believe that this accomplishes that if the initial license issued by the city is more reflective of the market price. We believe that people will be seeking it to do business, not seeking it so they can flip the license for a profit. So again, you know, making some extra money is, you know, some extra revenue, so we have to lean less on the taxpayers is always a good thing. But the goal here really is that we have people seeking this to do business, and kind of take the commodity aspect and winning the lottery out of the equation a little bit. Thank you. I'd stand for questions.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You kind of have to tell me, I'm listening to testimony, I'm looking at the bill, and I still see a $1,500 maximum. Forgive me for not remembering how this works from the interim, but you just go over the bill. We didn't get an explanation of the bill necessarily. How are we removing that? Are we removing the maximum? Is that what we're doing here? And just, I can use some help, because I'm trying to rectify what I'm hearing with what I'm reading on the paper here.
Mr. Fraser.
If it works for the chairman, thank you. I'll take that question so that I can, next time there's a tougher one, I can deflect it. Under the bill, it does retain the $300 to $1,500 for the renewal. So the initial issuance of the license would be based on market value within the community, and then the annual renewal would be limited to that range of $300 to $1,500.
And I
hope that
think
helps.
that really gets to the amendment that they proposed. It's a little bit clearer. We're trying to track the amendment in it, and we're having trouble, but if we just look at the final language you have, I think that's where it comes together. So, all right, any more questions for Mr. Fraser? Any more questions? Thank you, gentlemen, thank you very much. Who else would like to address us on the subject of retail liquor license fees, Senate File 3? Who else? Who else? Anybody online? Nobody online? I think we've heard the testimony. Committee, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure? Motion by Landon. Discussion. Why don't we, should we jump into the amendment? Is that all right?
Move the amendment.
So I got a motion on the amendment by Senator Boner. And Mr. Mosier, did you do this amendment? You creative guy. Mr. Mosier? Yeah, me over here. Did you, is this your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It was actually
Why don't you come sit down and we'll just visit about it. Mr. Montoya, I forgot all about you, didn't I? I should have just called in.
I hope it's okay, Mr. Chairman, but I thought I'd be joined by somebody who actually knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
to
that would be
explain the
wonderful.
amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya from the Liquor Division. Did you want to start, or?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I was there for the interim hearings, and the intent of this bill was really to allow the initial fee by the licensing authority to be whatever they want to set it. But the draft came out, and it doesn't read that way. It just kind of circles back on itself to the annual fee of between $300 and $1,500. So Mr. Mosier asked me to help do an amendment for Senator Scott. And so basically what this amendment does is just go back to the original intent of the bill. And it will read, the license fee to assess by the new retail license shall be amount determined by the local licensing authority. So they can set that fee, whatever they want to set that fee at, okay? And then the rest of that sentence, renewal of the retail liquor license, that's current statute. And that's their annual fee is going to be renewed at between $300 and $1,500, again, set by the local licensing authority. Now, if you'll see that Romanet I under E, we had to put that in there because under 124106B, what it says is that a local licensing authority can prorate the initial fee of a license so that they can have all the licenses expire at the same time. They don't want to deal with it year-round. They want to do it one time a year. But the way the statute read is it was on the annual fee. So if a licensing authority sets it $100,000, they'd have to prorate it at the annual fee. So what this does is allows them, Romanet I in the amendment allows them to prorate it at the fee that the licensing authority set. So they set it $100,000, it's going to be 6 months, it would be a $50,000 proration. That's what the amendment does.
Okay, questions for Mr. Montoya? And Mr. Montoya, you're the culprit on this, right?
I helped it, yep.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that the stage directions at the top of the page completely work. I think there might be a couple of problems in there. I've tried to do it myself and I'm doing it on the fly, but I think if we just grab the new language and read it in its entirety, it works. So if that's okay, and then we'll back it through LSO and get it right. But I think there's a little problem in like on the bottom of page 1, line 15 and continuing. It's just, it's got us, I noticed my colleagues here trying to track it through as well, so there's a little catch.
Apologies.
It's all right, no
Thousand
problem.
things going on at once at the division.
Let's just go work with, and Senator Boner, this is okay with you, we'll just work with this paragraph with the Romanet I that we can take care of here. So that would be the motion, that would be the amendment we're looking at. So discussion on the amendment, and you guys stay close. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in reviewing the other licenses, it seems that the highest number I can find that's authorized under current statute is $3,000 for a renewal or initial license. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to know if that's accurate. If there's any other open-ended fees, which this would be open-ended, everything else is limited, and this highest I see is $3,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Mosher, comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, there is, excuse me, they can charge a higher fee for a bar and grill license. I believe it's set at $10,500, and it's usually done by municipalities as an initial fee, although you can charge it after that. So we set that threshold because when we made the bar and grill, we made it non-transferable, but it was still kind of a thing of value. So it's kind of what this addresses, but with full retails. So they can charge up to $10,500. I know Cheyenne does, for example.
Okay, thank you for that. Down this way? All right. Any further comment? Anybody in the audience want to weigh in on the amendment? Okay. Committee, not detecting anything else on the amendment. Should we put her up for a question? And I'm going to be a conflict on the amendment, a conflict on the bill. So, but you ready for the question? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, I would be listed as a conflict on the amendment. Back on the bill, are there any other amendments to the bill?
Just a quick comment.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, really thankful for the amendment because
Makes sense now.
I was wrestling with this bill
Yeah.
and thank goodness. And I have a feeling that my friend from Commerce County was struggling too, so maybe I wasn't the only one, but anyway, I'm ready for the question.
I got it tracked into line 15 and then it just kind of blew up on me, so. All right, so we're just gonna, any further comment on the bill as amended? All right, let's call the roll on the bill.
Senator Barlow? Senator Boner? Senator Landon?
Aye.
Senator Scott? Mr. Chairman?
Conflict. So I got four ayes and a conflict. The bill's gonna go. Who would like to carry it on the floor?
I'll try it.
Okay, Senator Landon. Sure.
Need to do my part, but
Okay, and Senator Scott, we took testimony before you came in on Senate File 13, which was the bar and grill license, and we had considerable testimony. but we left it open. We thought we would hear testimony on the tavern and entertainment license. And some of us on the committee are searching for a way to maybe more put them together, but so we're just thinking about that. So let's take testimony and on Senate File 13, I'm sorry, Senate File 12, Tavern and Entertainment License. So Mr. Montoya, you're behind the pillar there, sir. That's cheating. So you could start us off.
Obviously, it isn't working, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Senate File 12. Okay, what this does is create a new type of license called a tavern and entertainment liquor license. Page 2 just kind of establishes beginning on line 5 what it is and where licensing authorities can issue this license. Beginning on line 10, basically what they have done is stolen some language from the bar and grill license, and just requires the 60% split, meaning 40% is alcohol sales, 60% is going to be from a combination of food sales and entertainment, and that goes through page 3. And again, on the bottom there, 18 and 19, dividing that between food, service, and entertainment sales, and then alcoholic beverage sales. Page 4, the annual fee for a tavern and entertainment license will be just like the bar and grill license, a minimum of $1,500 up to $10,500. On line 6 on page 4, a tavern entertainment liquor license shall not be sold, transferred, or assigned by the holder. And basically what that means is this license will never create value the way a full retail liquor license does. That, along with paragraph G on 14, that there's no population formula with the tavern license, same thing, same effect. They won't ever gain value. There is a restriction on page 4, line 9. It just says that they can't sell packaged liquor. Beginning on page 4, line 17, basically this is just standard language for all licenses that the dispensing area has to be approved by the local licensing authority. And of course, who qualifies for an entertainment license begin on page 5 on line 2. Local licensing authority will determine what entertainment means for their communities. Beginning on line 10, 12.1.101, this puts the tavern and entertainment liquor license into the definitions. And that definition is on page 6. Beginning on line 2, tavern and entertainment establishment means an establishment where food, alcoholic, and malt beverages are sold to be consumed on the premises and where the primary source of revenue from the operation is from the sale of entertainment, food, or a combination of entertainment and food, and not from the sale of alcoholic or malt beverages. And section 3 that gives the division the authority to create some rules for this. And then on page 7, this act becomes effective on July 1 of 2023.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Montoya? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, so the entertainment's going to be defined by each locality. What happens if the locality doesn't get around to, chooses not to define it?
Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Montoya.
Senator Scott, statutes allow for that. There's a statute that says that local licensing authorities can issue all, or they don't have to issue any of their liquor licenses. So it's really up to them. And again, you know, the interim committee was pretty lengthy in conversation about how to define entertainment. And a big concern is that this committee would be every year see some new definition for entertainment. So it was best just to leave it for the local licensing authorities because they're so different, so local city councils, local county commissioners can make that determination.
Follow up.
So the practical effect of all this is it very much is a local decision as to whether they're going to issue any and exactly what they're going to look like in terms of what they can do and what they can't.
Mr. Chairman, Senator
ahead.
Scott, exactly.
Anybody else? Questions for Mr. Montoya? Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Montoya, thank you. So I assume then it's a local licensing authority that would police the books? In the statutes, it looks good. It's got to be 60%, off of the sale of food and the entertainment itself. Only 40% for alcohol or whatever, but who looks at the books to determine that?
Mr. Montoya.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Leonard, great question. That's just like the restaurant licenses and the bar and grill licenses today. They have to put that information on an application, and that's a signed legal document. So it's sworn testimony that those numbers are correct. If local licensing authorities don't believe it's correct, or the liquor division doesn't believe it's correct, then we can audit that. Have we had to very much in the past? Maybe one or two times in the 32 years I've been around. These are just local business people trying to do things right. Occasionally they'll make a mistake, we'll question it, and they'll come back with corrections and, sign documents that it was just a mistake. But rarely do we see any violations.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Senator Scott.
Chairman, I'm unclear as to what the time frame is, because you're going to get variations. And suppose, take this community, and suppose you get a bunch of hard drinkers in for Frontier Days, and for that month, it's 60% of the income is from liquor sales, but you average it over the quarter and it's only 40%. Is that acceptable? Is the time frame left up to local definition?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Montoya.
Senator Scott, that's actually yearly numbers. So it's done over a year. So they just have to report on a yearly number based on the renewal date. And different licensing authorities have different renewal dates.
Good.
So, but it's an average over the year.
Yes.
Well, it's a total. It's a,
Yeah.
based on the financial statements for the company.
Correct.
Or yeah. So it'd just be, in that course of that year, did you have 60% of your revenue from food, or as it's going to be entertainment? So, committee, anybody else from Mr. Montoya? Okay. I saw our president come in. Maybe we should just yield to him. President Driscoll, what we've done is we heard testimony on Senate File 13, which is the bar and grill license, and we left it open. And now we're hearing testimony on the tavern entertainment bill, Senate File 12. So you're welcome to, you can choose, you can talk to us now or you can talk to us later. I just note you're here. It's good to see you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've described the interest in all the bills, and I've been kind of watch, see where we're at. And there's been a lot of input from cities and towns on this bill, and I wanted to watch the testimony, where we're going, all that.
Thank you very much, sir. Good to see you. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pretty sure he's right behind us if the fight breaks out.
It's a possibility. So
Yeah, come on down.
we know that online you're not hearing all this, and I apologize, but we were joined by President Driscoll, and we'll probably hear from him later. He's watching the proceedings, keeping an eye on us, which is a good thing. Who else would like to address us on this bill? Mr. Mosier, would you be next up on this? So it's tavern and entertainment licenses. Yes, the Kumbaya law is kind of breaking down, I think. Mr. Mosier.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. This one we're not singing Kumbaya on. We oppose this bill, and I'll go through briefly. Lord knows you've all heard lots about it. As I mentioned before, the liquor license changes we've made over the last 87 years have been, and I haven't been lobbying during that entire time, but have been sniper rifles. This is a nuke. This would open up liquor licenses to basically anybody with decent credit and creativity. And that's a problem, and I'll get into why real quick. I would like to mention, and as Mr. Brown mentioned, my concern is, I think if we do a fix that's a lot more tailored, I would like to keep Senate File 12, the bar and grills, or 13, the bar and grills pristine, because if there is a bill that moves forward like this, it becomes pin the tail on the donkey with everybody looking for their idea of what entertainment is. And so I would like to keep 13 as just a population formula change with the elimination of the bar and grill liquor license cap. This bill would replace the bar and grill liquor license. In fact, it would kind of replace the restaurant liquor license because the restaurant liquor license doesn't have as much flexibility as this license would have, because we're talking about food and entertainment. And so this, well, if this passed, you might as well shove aside the bar and grill that we worked on since 2007, because it would essentially replace it, as I mentioned. The big difficulty, or one of the big difficulties, is there isn't a definition of entertainment. And as I mentioned in testimony earlier, it's impossible to really define entertainment. When we've done carve-outs, we've done specific carve-outs targeted in specific sectors. Basically, and I've listed some of the fun ones. You could include gambling, including historic horse racing, bingo, pull tabs, or any other type of gaming, adult entertainment, video games, or anything similar, any sports-related event, or any event that sells tickets, because that's entertainment. So that would be a local rodeo. That could be, we did a rodeo bill, but this would be any rodeo that sells tickets enough to equal 60%, or your local football game. If they sell tickets, bowling alleys, and specialized retail, or even general retail. There are some of us that would consider a fishing tackle shop or a coin shop or a book shop entertainment, since there is no sidebars on that. If you look at the Merriam-Webster on entertainment, it's completely wide open. Music venues, movie theaters, et cetera. With Senate File 13, we have a tailor-fit targeted solution. With this, we're kind of blowing the whole system out of the water. Now, obviously, you've heard about the concern from retailers, and I do represent them, that have invested a sizable amount that is financed with their full retail liquor licenses. What this would very much harm them, because what would happen is everybody who doesn't do packaged liquor that serves food could swap out their full retail for a bar and entertainment, or if they do anything else, whether it's bowling alley, whatever, and those full retails will flood the market. And so that is a concern for that. But the concern I have, Mr. Chairman, is a lot more than that. We talk about local control, and I appreciate local control, but there's a reason we have statutory sideboards, because city councils, county commissioners change. For example, the town I reside in and used to have a liquor license here, we had a pretty Puritan city council when it came to liquor licenses. We even had proposals not to renew any liquor licenses. The one we have now, you could probably get a liquor license whenever you want to, but the problem is you have to deal with the aftermath of too many. Now, I would gently push back with my compatriot. These are not hardware stores, committee. People die from our product, from the abuse of our product, whether it's driving, whether it's drinking too much. We have a sacred responsibility, and I stress this with retailers in tips class, that is given to us by the municipality and county to serve our product in a responsible fashion. If we don't, and that's one of the things I like about a value of a full retail liquor license, we could lose that license. And it's good that we have that responsibility on us. These aren't burrito stands. And there are a miscellany of studies, and I've got a stack of them here, everything from the CDC to heaven knows where. One of them citing 30 different studies that show that alcohol outlet density, too much, has a negative effect, not only with law enforcement and alcohol-related incidents, but also economic development. Because if you get a bar in every corner, it's not good for the community. Part of the problem too, and Senator Land, addressing your issue with the slicing the pie thinner, yes, especially packaged liquor. Nobody's going to buy more packaged liquor because we know they're a packaged liquor store. They just go to a different place. Bars are much the same way since that's a shrinking market. And what happens when you have too many is predatory competition starts occurring. If I find that Senator Landon's bar is doing a great job and I'm not, I'll start running dollar specials. Mr. Odakoven's seen a lot of examples of that. You get a nickel beers, you're doing whatever you can to stay in business. In my opinion, I think we've saturated the market because the market will only bear so much as far as people drinking or eating. The only growth cycle is perhaps in bar and grills because people might go to a new restaurant, but they're not going to drink more in all likelihood. In fact, in some cases, we hope they don't. One misconception, the Department of Revenue, and some of you might remember this, did a survey some years back and found that Wyoming has as many liquor licenses per capita as Colorado, probably more now. We have a lot of liquor licenses. There is always demand for more liquor licenses, which is why we've continued to tweak it and will continue to do so. Now, if there is a targeted solution, and as I mentioned with ski resorts and rodeos, if there is one specific area, live entertainment, movie theaters, that we feel we could carve into bar and grill or something like that, I can see doing that. I can't tell you if we'd support it, but that actually makes sense. In this case, there are no sideboards. I don't know how you do sideboards. Because as Mr. Montoya mentioned, entertainment, the definition has changed considerably. Remember the draft bill when we had escape room games? In 5 years, we're not going to know what that is. And so entertainment by itself should not be a qualification for a liquor license. The examples that we talked about with carve-outs require a minimum amount of investment in economic development. When we included ski resorts into the resort license language, if you're going to spend $40 million on a ski resort, maybe you don't need 100 sleeping rooms. And the same was true with rodeo events. So can you specifically address specific needs? Yes, I believe you can. I believe that could be another bill, but it is not this bill. We do not need a new type of liquor license. If we do anything, it would be carving into existing language and make that solution tailor fit. One of the things you may have, now closing, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that's kind of interesting about my world is on this bill, we have what we would consider non-traditional allies. We have substance abuse groups, we have law enforcement, because we're all on the same side. We all suffer when there's too many licenses, and we all suffer when alcohol is irresponsibly served. Mr. Montoya, Mr. Odakoven, and I have, well, some of you remember House Bill 59 in the early 2000s, set through a lot of those substance abuse groups. Our job as retailers, and their job as law enforcement, and their job as substance abuse groups, is trying to mitigate the harm that alcohol can cause. And our opposition to this is not just based on liquor license value, it's the effect on the community. And if this bill passes, it would not have a positive effect on the community. Intemperate alcohol use is not economic development. So there I go, Mr. Chairman. And so if there is something that wants to address something specific with sideboards, but this is not that bill. And we ask that you oppose this bill and go back to Plan B. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Questions for Mr. Mosher? Questions for Mr. Mosher? Thank you. Who else would like to address the committee on this bill? Who's next? Former President Coons, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe it's time to take the drama, the flair for the dramatic, and the emotion out of what should be a rational discussion. With all due respect, nobody is trying to promote alcohol abuse, nor is the entertainment license, which is exactly what we're talking about here, designed to promote alcohol abuse. Mr. Chairman, as I listened to 11 applicants from Mr. Maury Brown, who lives in Cheyenne, applying for the one retail liquor license, he did not come. But there were 10 other people, small businesses, of which the last figure I saw, I'm sure it soared astronomically during COVID, was that 50% of small businesses in this country fail. That comes from the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, and their calculations across the country, the United States of America. So during that process, Mr. Brown, because he did not have the site he wanted in North Cheyenne to establish another packaged liquor store, withdrew his application and wished the rest of us the best of luck. We, along with 9 other people, were competing for one license. The license eventually went to a group down on 15th Street where we're located because council wanted to deal with a blighted area, the west edge of the city of Cheyenne. We were one of 4 that were under serious consideration. We did not receive the license. That's what spurred my interest, because I listened to people talking about how they had bought properties they wanted to improve, but like any other business, the margin provided by alcoholic beverages, properly regulated, properly distributed, properly following the rules, gives you a margin that can help you to stay in business. I was extremely surprised at the support I received from friends in the community of Cheyenne, all age groups. Oh, thank goodness we're going to have more choices, more entertainment, the ability to go where we want to go. The truth is, Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, and your question about the pizza is that it is the consumer that's making these choices. And it has shifted. When my parents were alive, they went to the bar to have a cocktail. That isn't the lifestyle anymore. So let's talk specifics. The real issue that we're all dancing around trying to decide what to do is the entertainment license. It's not the tavern bill. The tavern bill, in my opinion, with all due respect to Mayor Collins and Wham, is another bar and grill type of license. So it's the entertainment license. I have agonized over how to put sidebars up. The first one is I would ask the committee to please limit the number of entertainment licenses. That's a major sidebar. It should not be open-ended. And it is my hope that we will remove that and do something, whether it's population-based or just numbers that make sense. In our situation, and I speak only for obviously April Brimmer-Kuntz on behalf of ACES Range. I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I should have said that in the beginning. The number that makes sense in the city of Cheyenne, in our opinion, is 10. Why? Because there were 10 other applicants. Not all of them would receive a license that they were seeking under entertainment, but some of them would. The couples that bought the Cheyenne Elevator, which is a very old building, they cannot put a restaurant in there because of fire. The couple that bought the old Taco John's headquarters building has been forced to put a commercial kitchen into their operation so they could get a bar and grill license. Aces Range does not have room because of all of our simulators for a commercial kitchen. We do not have the room. We cannot do that. So what I grappled with is what to do about entertainment, because it is too broad. And I don't think it would go as far as has recently been discussed, but it is too broad. And the first sidebar is to limit the number of entertainment licenses. As I was thinking about entertainment, because that is the major pushback that I believe this bill has received, I thought, well, we could really narrow it and talk about sports simulators. But that really narrows it. I do believe it would not be special interest legislation to do that in violation of the Constitution, because you could have sports simulators for just about every sport. But what we really were trying to do with this concept is economic development. So I worked into the wee hours of the morning one night and thought maybe we should rename it Economic Development Licenses. But there are a lot of issues with that too, and how you define it. And then once again, it goes to your local governing bodies to determine whether or not it's economic development. But that's what we're really trying to do with this, is spread enough opportunity across the state to decide what their communities are suited for. So I would call your attention to the fact that this bill does not establish a property right, as I think would be in the discussion with those who have had liquor licenses for a long time. Part of the reason in Cheyenne that the prices are so high is there's no competition, for one thing. But the second is it's become a commodity. And it's true in Casper as well, perhaps not as much in our smaller communities. But somehow the definition has to be narrowed. And we at Aces Range are working to narrow it. Aces Range is a family business. It's golf simulators and shooting simulators. We're hoping to have an agreement for a lowered price with the high schools that have golf programs to let them come and practice in the winter. Grandchildren want to have a birthday party there, just for the fun of it. They're not old enough to play golf, but just for the fun of it. So it is not a threat to a lot of liquor licenses here. Mr. Chairman, there is no way that we can say by carving out a new niche or niche, however you prefer to say it, we are indeed increasing liquor licenses. That's exactly what this bill does. We are under the restrictions of the bar and grill license with the 60-40%. So I struggled thinking too about what sidebars to put up. One of those sidebars would be a family-oriented business. At night, for golf leagues, it's not a family-oriented business unless adult children are competing over the age of 21, but that's a different thing than those under 21. So for the most part, though, we are a family-oriented business. And I think that could be an element of entertainment that would be rational, a sidebar. I had a visit, and excuse me if it's improper, please correct me, with Representative Sherwood from
It's okay.
Albany County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And she talked to us about the WYO Theater, which is now in control of the city of Laramie, as I understood it. The two theaters that are here that weren't the drive-in, the Jonah Center is where the old Motorview Drive-In used to be. In Cheyenne are the Lincoln and the Paramount, and they are thriving businesses. The Lincoln has turned into a major entertainment venue, bringing groups in, and our own Chancey Williams, who's going to be in March at the Grand Ole Opry. But I mean, it's that type of business that we're talking about. So ACE's Range is a specialty area. What my hope would be is that the committee would seriously consider this bill. The commitment from us is please limit the number, and we will try to put sidebars up. And Mr. Chairman, I have been out of the legislature now for 18 years. I served 16, I've been out 18. But I do remember some of the rules. I believe that the title of bar and grill, if there is a merger of the two bills, and entertainment is the issue, it's not so much tavern, I don't think. I think the title amendments to bar and grill would be sufficient. But I also don't want to be accused of piggybacking. And if it is the preference of others that we not merge the bill, we would appreciate the opportunity to put the amendment, to put those other sidebars up as we all work together. Because theaters could be part of that. There's a large group, and if you do family entertainment, then the people who have the Cheyenne Elevator and the Westbys could maybe surrender. I don't know how that works. Their grill, but they probably wouldn't, bar and grill, they probably wouldn't want to since they've gone to the expense of a commercial kitchen. But it would open up economic development on a smaller scale. And so, Mr. Chairman, however we proceed, we do request that the sidebar of limiting the licenses please come out as a standing committee amendment. I don't know that we're ready to do a standing committee amendment on merging the bills or putting those other sideboards up, but if we are, we welcome it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Coons? Thank you. I had kind of a flashback of having her testifying on a bill of mine and from the floor. I remember your capabilities very well, and welcome. Okay, any questions? Who else would like to testify? Mr. Coons.
Mr. Chairman and committee.
Pull that close, just pull it over to you.
My name is JB Coons. I'm here on behalf of ACE's Range. I'm a young entrepreneur in the state looking for an opportunity to develop a business here and continue to stay in this state. As was stated before, there were many worthy applicants for our liquor license that had taken on blighted properties in our city. I think it's very important that this committee takes a look at the possibilities of the economic development that could take place throughout our state and throughout all of our municipalities that could use this kind of a bill and legislation to help their communities and develop their small businesses and go after their American dream. I mean, that's why we're here to speak out and to bring it to everybody's attention that we think there needs to be some changes in the legislation that was written many, many years ago to apply to our more modern times and more modern business concepts. We're really excited to be part of the Cheyenne area. As we stated before, we're going to be working with the high schools. We're going to be bringing them out for league nights to help with their golf game and help with their development. We're also going to be doing league nights as well for adults, which will bring out 36 different people each night to that district. And I believe strongly that rising tides will bring up all of the ships. I think if we can create a good solid district in these municipalities where families can go out and it's not just a bar, it's entertainment for all ages. I think it's paramount, and I think it's important in helping to retain Wyoming families in Wyoming. I also think that a lot of Wyomingites go to other states for entertainment needs, and I think that it is possible that we have the businesses and the people that are willing to take on these businesses to keep our patrons in the state and then the money in the state. I also think that these districts will help with tourism, which is a big part of Wyoming and Wyoming's economy. And I think it's very important that we take a serious look at what needs to be done. And I understand it's a very complicated process, which I'm very honored to be a part of today. But I just want to say thank you guys for your time and your consideration on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Before we, I just want to say I'm watching your mom's face while you're testifying, and possibly the most proudest face I've seen. And we all knew your dad very well, and he was a personal friend of mine. So grateful to have you here today.
Thank you,
So
Mr. Chairman.
questions for Mr. Coates? Thank you both. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address us on this bill? Mr. Collins. Mayor Collins.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Patrick Collins, Mayor of Cheyenne. I am definitely here today to support Senate File 12. And I'm thinking back to what we just talked about a little bit ago, 2006. We were out of liquor licenses that fit the Olive Garden model. And, you know, one of the answers was to fix our retail liquor license numbers. But we came up with a compromise, which was the creation of the bar and grill license. Today, we're, I think, in exactly the same situation. 85.7% of Wyoming cities and towns with populations over 1,000 people are sold out of liquor licenses. So I think it's time to find a compromise to allow local governing bodies the tools necessary to encourage entertainment-type businesses to open or to help them stay open financially in their communities. So I'm thinking things like bowling alleys, what the Coonses were talking about with their simulator business, things like that. And 85.7% of our cities and towns were not in a position to help them. I think one answer would be to fix the formula for retail liquor licenses. But as Mr. Mosier was talking about earlier, we maybe need to be a little bit more precise in our aim on that. And I think the right answer would be to copy our very successful bar and grill license. Like the bar and grill, this entertainment license requires 60% of the revenue to come from food, or excuse me, entertainment or food or both. And we know it's worked in Wyoming since 2006. During our interim times, and thank you all for all the time that you spent talking with us on liquor issues, we worked a lot on the definition of entertainment. In the end, the committee left that definition to the local governing bodies, and what I got from that was a couple of things. One is it would be really hard to make a list that would be right for every community in the state. And the second reason was that if there was a change to be made, it would have to come back to this governing body, this legislature, and that takes a year or sometimes 2 years to get through your process. Where local governing bodies can work at the speed of business, we can go through our Procedures Act and we can make those changes. You know, local governing bodies are the closest to the people, and I think we're going to be the most responsive to, I think, the requirements and the wishes of our communities. The bar and grill license has resulted in 89 restaurants operating in our state successfully, and I believe the entertainment license will similarly spur new entertainment businesses opening in our state. Listening to some of the testimony that was before us today, I'm thinking back again to 2006 and trying to start off on a conservative level. I know the bill as it's written right now has no limits to the number of entertainment licenses. And again, I think intellectually, I'm thinking, why would we want to limit entertainment businesses? But I think really the thing that we might want to do is go back to what we did in 2006 and create a population formula, just like we did the bar and grill. Don't conflate the two, because I think the bar and grill is a critical license for us, and I don't want to see something happen because we're arguing over this particular part of it. But let's go back to 2006 when we created the bar and grill. Let's have a formula. We have a formula today. It works, and create a bar and grill, or excuse me, an entertainment license that would successfully allow the Coonses to open here in Cheyenne and other businesses across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions for Mr. Mayor? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have really appreciated your testimony this morning. I'm sitting here wondering, why would we not just alter the definition of bar and grill to include these new types of establishments and just tweak the formula that you've worked on through WHAM and all of your brothers and sisters out there. I think if I read it correctly, that if we stayed with the formula in Senate File 13, that's 6 new licenses that will come this year as a result of that if this bill goes through. What about that combination? How would you feel about that?
Mayor
Mr. Chairman,
Collins.
through you, Senator, intellectually, I think that would be something we could do. My fear is that I don't want to see the bill jeopardized because we're adding something different. The bar and grill, we have everybody in support of doing that. And it's a critical need, I think, in the communities that are sold out of bar and grill licenses, our tourist places. They truly need this license. And I guess I'd be just a little nervous that if it got in the legislature and we had a fight over entertainment, that would kill the whole thing. I really want to see the bar and grills move forward. I think it's an important thing. But if that's your choice, I'll be there to support you, whatever you decide.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mayor Collins, when you receive a renewal for a bar and grill license now, there's currently 2 categories: food sales and alcoholic and malt beverage sales, food service sales and alcohol. Is it ever that that doesn't account for 100% of the gross receipts that the business may have had? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I can answer definitively that, but we do see that they meet the state requirement of 60/40. There may be other things that they do that I'm not aware of, but we do see an affidavit that their sales meet that number. And I'm always surprised at how small the liquor part of that for most of our restaurants are. I would have thought they would be bumping up against that number pretty hard, but I find it to be very interesting that the alcohol part of those sales tends to be a smaller percentage than I would have thought.
Thinking out loud, Mayor Collins, we could pass these bills separately, but use the entertainment license and refer to the new limits in the same section of law in the bar and grill, and just say that the entertainment, it takes some finesse, and we need some help with LSO. I think that is a possibility. We come up with a separate definition, separate deal, but it's actually keyed, and the aggregate number of the bar and grill and the aggregate number of our new license all fall under the same formula. And that's a possibility. I'm just throwing it out there. And that is a way to limit it. and make it not seem like we're kicking the door wide open. I'm having trouble understanding the whole tavern concept. Seems to me that a tavern in this bill, if they do food, it's just a bar and grill, but it's out of the limits. So it's sort of like we have two bills that do the exact same thing, one that's limited and one that's not. So that's been bothering me a bit too. Right? To you, sir.
Senator, I think I understand your quandary, and that might be an eloquent solution, that we have a total number of bar and grill and entertainment licenses. And so we, as a local municipality, get to pick, we get to fill that bucket, if you will. And so let's say, in Cheyenne right now, we have 14 bar and grill licenses. That's what we're limited to, and that's what we have. In the new bill, I think we go to 21, if I remember correctly. And so we could make that either bar and grills, or we could make the entertainment licenses within the numbers we currently have. I think that would be an eloquent solution. I think what we really need is an opportunity to be able to support the young entrepreneurs like you heard just recently, and help them be able to get into business. I think having quality of life things like a place to go play golf in the wintertime, or additional bowling alleys, or things like that.
If this
are
brings
something we
bowling
want to do.
back, I'm all for it.
What's that?
If this brings bowling back, I'm all for it.
I'm with you. So I think that could be a good way to do it, would be to create a separate license, but then have a maximum number that could be in there. I could live with that. I think that'd be a great idea. And once it's proven out, just like the bar and grill, over time, we could look at it and decide, 5 or 6 years now, we can come back and revisit the issue, show that it's worked or not worked, and move forward from there.
And just by way of housekeeping and telegraphing out loud here, this may take a little finessing. Not saying we can get it done today. I think, I can say confidently, I think the bar and grill license concept sound on good footing. I'm sure it would pass this committee if we forced it to a vote right now. But on the off chance that we need to tweak that bill slightly to accommodate this concept, if we go down this road, I think we should leave them both open together. And that is, so what we could do, I mean, we're gonna take everybody that wants to testify today, for sure, but leave them open till Thursday and try to give people a chance to put the concept together. I'm just looking, I'll start with Senator Scott. What do you think of this concept?
Mr. Chairman, as it stands, I very much like actually both of the bills. And in the Senate File 12, the tavern and entertainment, I like the feature of the local definition of what entertainment is. I think that's a wise way to let people govern themselves locally. We've made a lot of progress. When I started out, our liquor laws were about as restrictive as they possibly could be, and we've made a lot of progress getting rid of that. And we've done it successfully because we've done it relatively slowly in a way that didn't devastate people who had invested a lot in buying the liquor license. And that's, I think, been a very successful thing over time. As somebody who believes in free enterprise, I like to see them just wide open, and if they get to be too many, let the bankruptcy courts deal with it.
I was almost there.
But, Mr. Chairman, if it takes a population formula to get it passed so that it's more gradual, I could support that. I could support merging them if that's what the rest of the committee wants to do. I could support leaving them separate if that's what the committee wants to do. I'm perfectly happy to go either way, but I do like particularly the let the locals define the entertainment feature. And I think that an expansion is needed, because I think we're starting to restrict entrepreneurial creativity the way it is right now.
Just speaking for myself, I think the thinking is not to merge them, but to make sure they're consistent and perhaps connected in the sense of the population formula and as it evolves. Senator Barlow, you've been working on this quite a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know.
This committee will drive you to drink, I might add.
Mr. Chairman, then I'm in first in line. Mr. Chairman, so I do have actually a proposal. It actually is a merging. It's not a keeping them separate, which is easily, I mean, can be done as well. But I want to hold off until we have the complete testimony,
Yes,
so I
sir.
don't want to make any further comment. But I do have something that I've done some work on to try to understand and would offer to the committee or to the public as well. Thank you.
And we could offer it to the group here and let them ruminate on it for a couple days. So, Mayor Collins, this is kind of where our thinking is, and I just go back to the public. I got Mr. President there and others. Let's make sure we get everybody's thoughts on this, and both licenses are still open. Mr. President, would you like to address us? Welcome, sir. Almost didn't see you're getting so skinny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of hard to sit out there in the audience and not be able to ask questions. I'm
I
on
know.
the other side looking at you where I used to sit. And this
Well,
is,
there
this is
are now
very
four
interesting.
chairmans of this committee in this room, and maybe Ms. Kuntz has chaired this committee at one time, but back to you, sir.
So I'm going to be reasonable brief and, go down a path. First off, I have a conflict. I'm a full retail liquor license holder, so I've got a little different view of this maybe than others because I don't look at an entertainment license, and really the tavern part you hit dead on.
Yeah.
Whatever, but I think there's a real need for an entertainment license. When we heard the early testimony and we talked about bars and the problems that go with them, and we all know that. I grew up in towns with bars, and you know what they are and what they run like. Modern times this really is, and you talked about bowling, and when I grew up, that's the liquor license I think of as truly an entertainment is, my folks drank beer while us kids bowled, and we all had fun, and it's kind of an interesting deal. And there's some components to this bill that are different than the other one, and one of them kind of got hit on at the end is definition of what on the local level, what entertainment is. And I'll give you an example of it is local entertainment right now is happening in Moorcroft, and it's chicken roping.
I'm sorry, it's
Chicken roping, kind of interesting.
chicken roping.
And the kids can't do it because they hold it at the bar.
Oh.
And an entertainment license on a local area, that might be what they call the entertainment. It might be a golf simulator in Cheyenne, and it might be a bean toss somewhere else. And I love the local idea that your local authority decides what the entertainment is and how it happens. And the other part is we struggle in Wyoming nonstop. How do we diversify our economy? How do we do it? And folks, I watched this Cheyenne deal, and it's part of what I did, and we went to the meetings over the summer. And you watch 10 or 11 businesses here in town that are willing to invest. Some of them multi-millions, but all of them several hundreds of thousands to bring new businesses to different parts of town. What are we trying to do in our towns? We're trying to invigorate our towns, and instead we say, well, let's head south to Fort Collins because they can do down there because of population what we can't. And so I really look at this not as a threat to full retail licenses. I really don't. I don't think you're going to see it. And I think the good mayor testified to that. I don't think most of them, you need to worry about the 60%. It's great it's there. Most of them, it's going to be a minor part of their business. It just allows things to happen. And the truth is, we've been through this with the wine as well, is how do we allow this to go? And I think this one's a path to get you there. And it does it in a kind of a finessed way. Maybe you strike tavern out of it and just leave it entertainment and let the cities pick some of them and leave your tavern and your together, because these aren't restaurants. That was the testimony you heard, is they don't want to put commercial kitchens in. They want to use the alcohol as a side piece so that they can have the crowd that part of them like to have a beer while their kids are doing something. So to me, I think this is different. We're creating a new class of license. It's not expanding out big, it's a new class. And I think it's an important class. I don't think it matters much in the small counties, but it certainly does in these bigger towns. And I, for one, would like to go down, that we're going to do everything we can to help our towns be successful. Because after all, when we look around the room, that's where our money comes from, is right out of them. So I'd ask you consider it. I don't think it's a big threat. These licenses aren't resellable. They're not movable. I also like that. So I really don't think that they play a major impact on these other deals. There's some black helicopters flying around out there, but I don't see it that way at all from my standpoint. It's just a further end of it. I don't think issuing these licenses is going to close down any bars. And it's not going to cost any retail licenses to go out of business. It's not changed the value of their licenses. So my encouragement's to try to keep them separate. And if you do merge them, make sure there's a subclass that takes care of the entertainment end of it, because otherwise I think what you're going to see is another chain restaurant that sucks up the license and it still leaves out those 10 licenses that apply. So thank you. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, sir. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Appreciate your testimony as a holder of a full liquor license. How do you feel about the open-endedness of what we're looking at this morning with respect to the entertainment licenses?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, I missed that piece of my testimony. Had it wrote down and I was trying to be quick because there's a lot of people and a lot of time, but I fully believe all liquor licenses need to have limits on them. And so, no, I've visited with a couple mayors around. I don't think anybody thinks that we ought to issue get out of jail free cards randomly. I think there should be a limit on it. And I'll leave that to committee. You guys make wise choices, but I truly believe it should be limited in some fashion. Maybe population may be tied to the bar and tavern licenses, but there should be a limit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr.
Anybody
President.
else? Thank you, sir. All right, so kind of the plan, I think, is that we're going to leave these two bills open till Thursday, but I want to give anybody an opportunity to address the committee that needs to at this point. And if there's anybody online, yes, please come. Mr. Odokoven, Ms. Parsons, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Odokoven, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, joined today with Rhea Parsons, who works for the association, but more importantly is actively involved in the prevention world in all aspects. And part of that aspect, of course, is dealing with the outcomes involving alcohol. So let me touch on part of it for a moment. When this concept first came about, Mayor Collins and I spent quite a bit of time together talking about the pros, the cons, the what ifs, the ramifications, and kind of settled on a general discussion of the pendulum is swung. Alcohol seems to be more prevalent in terms of a desire to do more opportunities under a host of reasons and rationale. But we also were reminded that no matter what we do, currently, alcohol contributes to more than half of the arrests. So as we consider these kinds of issues, we need to be reminded at your level, at least, that part of support for local towns and counties comes from the legislature in terms of funding, because part of these issues of expansion carry a cost of services as it relates to greater alcohol density, greater issues with drinking, likely numbers change and move. So I would just ask that we be sensitive to cities, towns, and counties for additional needs as a result of expansion of alcohol. Likewise, in years past, state agencies were very active in this role, talking about the harmful effects of alcohol and intervention. Of course, your crisis beds that we talk about, mental health issues that we talk about, a host of other things that come with alcohol density, alcohol expansion, and of course, the use and misuse of alcohol. So please, just a sensitive moment in some of those areas as we go forward with some of these points. Again, likewise, Wyoming participated through the WISAC, Wyoming Statistical Analysis Center, of a survey of Wyoming residents in terms of their thoughts on alcohol. 79%, nearly 80%, view alcohol abuse by adults as a serious or somewhat serious problem of consideration. When residents were asked whether there was sport law prohibiting sale to someone who's overly intoxicated, 64% said yes. Another 17.9 said they would somewhat support a law along those lines. And reminded that nearly 85% of Wyoming residents believe that drinking and driving in their community was a serious or somewhat serious problem. So again, as we talk about expansions and opportunities for this, a moment to be sensitive to the local needs, that they may have some expansion of service in prevention as well as enforcement that may come to mind, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons,
Mr. Chairman.
is your microphone on? Is there a green light?
Oh, sorry. It is now.
There we,
There you
thank
go.
you.
Go ahead.
My name is Rhea Parsons. I lead a substance abuse prevention and mental health effort under the umbrella of the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. I have been volunteering in substance abuse prevention or working in it for nearly 20 years, either on a local level or here on a state level. While I'm a recent resident of Cheyenne, coming on 3 years, I'm a lifelong resident of Campbell County and spent a great deal of time there, either volunteering at events that had alcohol at them, or even as a server in my mother's restaurant, who owned a bar and grill in Gillette for about 10 years. So I have a lot of experience in this area, working to prevent underage drinking, adult binge drinking, impaired driving, all of those things. From a server aspect or a volunteer aspect working in a community, I can tell you that food is an important tool. If patrons are coming into a restaurant or they're out and about in a community event and they drink to the point of intoxication, food is just a really great tool to settle them down, get some water in them, get some food in them so that they hopefully will make a good decision. The other thing that I did during my time in Campbell County is I led a DUI task force, and I did this alongside the Campbell County Sheriff, who was also administering a 24/7 program. So we spent a lot of time looking at the data. And one thing I can recall for sure being an issue there in Campbell County, and I'm pretty certain I've seen that here in Laramie County as well, is that typically when you're looking at data and where there's clusters of things happening, such as public intoxication, DUIs, fights breaking out, things of that nature, it's typically coming from a business that sells alcohol only and does not sell food. And law enforcement themselves report increased calls to those specific areas. I will tell you that I've spent a lot of time working with business owners as well, restaurant owners, as a part of the work that we have done. And I can tell you that most all of them care deeply about the community. They want, for their patrons to get home safe. I have visited with servers who just worry endlessly when their patrons leave, to the point sometimes of even holding them there and driving them home at the end of the night to make sure that they get home safe. So I know that food is a tool for those servers. It's a tool for law enforcement to, again, encourage people to make good behavior, because at the end of the day, alcohol on an empty stomach is never really a good idea. So from a substance abuse prevention standpoint, as well as I said, working in the service industry a couple of moons ago, food is what we believe to be a very important aspect of what you are considering. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions for either Mr. Overcover? Why can't I do it? I've been doing that for 30 years. Very sorry. Byron and Ms. Parsons, questions? Thank you both. I think that was very good points. Okay. Anybody else will testify? All right, committee, with your indulgence and everybody in the room, let's hold this over till Thursday morning. We'll probably start at 7:30 again. And can I look to you, Senator Barlow, maybe to communicate your ideas and share them with us now and maybe share them with this group out here? Is that a good idea?
Mr. Chairman,
to
so
you.
I'd be glad to do that now, or if I can just pass it out to members, interested parties in the audience, and then we can have a sidebar at another time. So however you'd like to do it. And it is Mr. Chairman, it is a combination. It is merging the current statute with entertainment. And it's actually quite easy. I believe it's well within the title of the bar and grill amendments. And I've had it reviewed by LSO, at least it's not in their form, but they've reviewed it. So however you'd like to do it, Mr. Chairman. And it retains the licensing authority to determine what entertainment is, to Chairman Scott's point. Maybe not in the same language that's in the bill draft before you, but in similar language, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, let me just say I commend you for taking a bite at this, and we'll let everybody look at it. We're not going to work it today. And really, let's hand it out, and then let's switch to the blockchain bills. We have 2 blockchain bills. If we could get them out today, I think we'd do a service to all these people that are waiting. But I'd certainly give you anything last to say.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the merging, the decision within the merging is, one, do you want to merge it into a single bill, the bar and grill bill? The second one is, if we do that merging, is there a discussion between the parties that are in agreement on the number change in the bar and grill to adjust that in some way? I would argue that maybe upward to Senator Scott's point earlier. But anyway, if they want to have that discussion about, do they adjust their numbers, their tiering system, if you will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator, and good work. I think we heard some testimony from that they would work within the numbers that are in the bar and grill now. So you may not need to raise them, but we'll leave that open for right now. So maybe you could try to get people together this afternoon or tomorrow or something like that. There's your man. So thank you very much. We will we'll table that till Thursday, and we'll pick it back up. Senator Rothfuss, welcome.
Thank you.
The next bills for our consideration are blockchain and grill licenses. No, I'm sorry. We have come all the way. So I think we just do them in numerical order. It'd be Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments. And I welcome and introduce co-chairman, chairman of the House, Representative Gerald Olson, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opportunity to bring Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organization Amendments. This is hopefully a pretty easy one from the Select Committee on Blockchain, et cetera. Mr. Chairman, you'll recall that I think this is the 4th revision, if I'm not mistaken, of our original Dow Act from a few years ago, where we've basically taken opportunities to provide some cleanup to that original LLC revision, or technically not a revision, an addendum. And the changes this time simply address one small concern to the supplement that has come up quite a few times, and this concern was raised by the Secretary of State's office during the interim, that there was not sufficient clarification in the act for what a publicly available identifier is. We have that as a requirement during the registration process for one of these decentralized autonomous organizations. Happy to give background on that if you'd like background on it. But the key concept is that decentralized autonomous organization is going to be at least partially managed through some type of algorithm. And one of the requirements in the registration is that those algorithms be made public, basically. And that requires a public identifier that points to the smart contract, the algorithm that is going to be engaged with this LLC structure. So we require that that be part of the registration process. But there was a lot of confusion during the first few years. And Mr. Chairman, I'll note that we've got, I think, just shy of 500 DAOs registered in the state of Wyoming since we passed this a few years ago, each providing revenue nicely to the state as we intended, and hopefully that will continue to grow. We are the leading jurisdiction in the country with DAO registrations as we intended, and most of the innovation related to DAOs is focused on Wyoming. Not all of it. We'll hopefully secure more. We've got a few other things we need to work on. But this is one clarification then that will help the Secretary of State's office to make it clear what we want when we request a publicly available identifier. And you can see the core of the bill on page 2 is simply an addition of a definition into the DAO supplement stating that a publicly available identifier means an address that is available publicly and that identifies a smart contract and may include a uniform resource locator, URL, that's a standard terminology as you're aware, contract address or other similar reference. What we were getting occasionally would just be like a web page that has a white paper on it, which is entirely not what was intended. This contains the appropriate terms of arts that we drafted during the interim to make it clear that we're looking for a direct address to that smart contract so that there's clarity in what is going on with this particular DAO. The only other change to the DAO supplement then at the bottom of page 2 is the addition that the articles of organization shall be amended when you change that publicly available identifier. In other words, if you're going to change your publicly available identifier, you need to report that back to the Secretary of State's office so that they have that in record so that the public will always be able to see the most updated publicly available identifier that's available. And that's it.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add, Mr. Co-Chairman?
No, Mr. Co-Chairman, just here for the moral support.
Which
Okay.
is appreciated.
Questions? Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I will confess I did not fully understand the definition at the top of page 2, publicly available identifier. Okay, the URL you explained, what's a contract address? What does that mean? Does that mean a mailing address? What does that mean? What are you talking about?
Thank you, Mr.
Back to you.
Chairman. Senator, it's not provided here, but you'll see in the DAO supplement that a smart contract is specifically defined as a term of art within the realm of DAOs and other blockchain technology. And it's under Romanet 9 in that same section, which means an automated transaction as defined in 4021-102A Romanet 2, or any substantially similar analog or code, script, or programming language relying on a blockchain, which may include taking custody of and transferring an asset, administering membership interest votes with respect to a decentralized autonomous organization, or issuing executable instructions for these actions based on the occurrence or non-concurrence of specified conditions. Mr. Chairman and Senator, it's a very specific term of art. Folks that are familiar with DAOs and that would be operating in the DAO space will be using smart contracts to do that. And if you're not using smart contracts, there's a pretty good chance that you're not a DAO.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Senator Scott?
Smart contract, I've heard the term. I don't think it's exactly the opposite of a stupid contract.
Mr.
But
Chairman and Senator, that is accurate. It is not simply the opposite of a stupid contract, which we've all regrettably probably signed at one time or another. A smart contract is a very, as that definition implies, a very specific term of art that is used in blockchain and digital asset space, which is basically algorithms or code, computer code, that implements a legitimate legal transaction of one form or another. So the contract is in code, conditions are met, and the contract self-executes. And I'll yield to the good senator here who knows more about contract theory.
Oh, don't degrade me as a senator.
My apologies. I'll yield to the good representative, my co-chairman here.
I think just,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Scott, the simplest way to think of the smart contract is code. It really is. So you might have a limited liability company's operating agreement written in, paper and pen, telling you the rules of the organization, the bylaws, if you want to refer to it as such, but it's the operating agreement. The rules of your organization are on pen and paper, or they're typed on paper. The smart contract is just simply saying all of that is written in code as opposed to on paper and pen. That's it. It's that simple. Now, the definitional change here, you would have, what we would most likely see is a URL web address that you could click on, and it would take you to the code that is that smart contract. And that's all this definition. I'm not exactly sure, Mr. Co-Chairman, I would yield to you on this, on what I think was the original part of Senator Scott's question. If you don't have a URL address, you might have a contract address. So what might a contract address look like? I'm not certain, but that's an alternative.
And Mr. Chairman, that's
Senator
accurate.
Rothfuss.
And Senator, it could be a direct address to a smart contract that could be on a blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, for example. There is a unique identifier which will point you to a specific location on it. It's kind of the difference between when you type in www.google.com, that is simply a translation service. Google then looks up in the domain name service, the DNS, what the actual address is, which is something like their DNS is actually 8.8.8.8, which is handy. So that resolves, and the numbers are the true address, and the URL is the simple name used through the DNS, which is the www.google. It's the same concept here, which is that this will allow either the explicit unique numeric address or the simplified address that points to and resolves to that address. And there are services that provide that.
Any further questions? Senator Scott.
Jim, am I right in thinking that these organizations, like all others, do have an agent for service of process in case you have some controversy with them and need to serve them, as in, say, a lawsuit?
Mr.
Co-Chairman.
Chairman, Senator Scott, that is correct. They operate in that capacity where if they were domiciled here in the state of Wyoming, then they could just have a Wyoming resident. It didn't necessarily have to be a commercial registered agent, but if they're domiciled outside of Wyoming, then they must have a registered agent that is in the state of Wyoming.
Anybody else for these gentlemen? Thank you. Just by way of housekeeping, we've got the other bill, which is a lot of new language. And so I suspect it would take a while. So I expect that our best strategy is to try to get through this first bill. 75 will carry 76 over to Thursday. I'm just letting everybody know. And so we'll start with that, and then we might start with the liquor licenses, I'm not sure. But that's probably going to occupy a lot of our Thursday. So anything else for you gentlemen to add? And then who else would like to testify? Mr. Secretary of State, welcome. Welcome. Good to see you. Bring your team, and good to see you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'm Chuck Gray, the Wyoming Secretary of State. Happy to be here at Senate Corporations. Look forward to working with you. To my left is our Chief Deputy, Jesse Naiman, and to my right is Joe Rubino, our General Counsel, Chief Policy Director.
Welcome.
Thank you. The Secretary of State's office, with pretty short comments here on this one. We're fine with Senate File 75. It has no fiscal impact. I think that clarifying the definition for publicly available identifier is a good addition to the statute, and also the clarification on when an amendment will be triggered. So don't have many comments. We were more here for 76, but definitely wanted to say that we were supportive of 75 as well.
Thank you. Is it acceptable would you be able to come on Thursday?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Questions for the Secretary of State's office?
And then also, I'd like to introduce Jordan Gray,
Yes.
the acting director of our business division.
We've corresponded. But
Yes.
It's good to meet. So thank you, Ms. Gray. Anything? Thank you very much. Who else would like to address the committee on this bill? Senate File 75. Anybody else there? Anybody online? Okay, committee, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure? Do pass by Scott. I want that to be noted. Discussion? All those in favor signify by, well, wait, it's a roll call vote. Thank you.
Senator Barlow. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Landon. Senator Scott. And Mr. Chairman.
Aye. So I thought we were going to be spending about 10 minutes or so on this bill, and all of a sudden it collapsed and it's passed. Is there anything start you want to make on Senate File 76? We will definitely continue it over, but do you want to give us an overview or anything? I'll give you about 10 minutes. And maybe there's somebody that can't be here on Thursday that you'd want to squeeze in, but.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't know that there is anybody that can't be here on Thursday. I am happy to do whatever you'd like, and we can give you a quick overview at this time.
Maybe you
and
can
walk
tell
through
us where we're going, and then
Sure.
it'd help us to think about it on Thursday.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Chairman, just as an overview, the Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act is something we've been talking about for a few years on the Blockchain Select Committee, and we put something together this year. So first, I'll note that it's drafted originally based on a conforming draft with our Wyoming Trademark Act. So Wyoming has the capacity to register trademarks through the Secretary of State's office already, and that is done. States have the opportunity to register trademarks. But typically, as you know, Mr. Chairman, trademarks are registered at the federal level more often than not, and that there's federal jurisdiction. With regard to digital assets, the federal government really doesn't have their act together in terms of clarifying property rights and what anything means in the digital asset space. So there's a real vacancy there and an opportunity for the state. We do have quite a bit of clarifying statute in place, getting back to a number of years ago where we codified digital assets under the Uniform Commercial Code. I believe that came through this committee at the time. And as a result, we are a good jurisdiction when it comes to where you would want to have your digital assets as property, so to speak. The thing about digital assets is they could be anywhere. And typically they're on a series of different servers all over the planet, cloned in many places so that they're not deleted. So how do you establish where there is when you're talking about which laws you'll be operating under? In essence, the Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act says if you register a digital asset in the state of Wyoming through the Secretary of State's office, then you'll claim basically that it's domiciled in the state of Wyoming for legal jurisdictional purposes, and you will then have the benefits of clear statutes in the state of Wyoming and access to the Chancery Court for consideration of any related concerns to challenges or whatever legal issues might come up. So that's the overview concept, and I'm happy to walk through the bill, but that's the intent of what we're looking to accomplish here. There's a registration fee, there's a filing process. That's a little bit complicated, and we can get into that. It takes a little bit of an upgrade for the Secretary of State's office. The fiscal note has a $250,000 note of reprogramming to get the API in place that would allow for this type of registration. So one of the things that probably needs to be discussed, and actually having the opportunity to come back Thursday, we could maybe put together a little amendment so that we've got that $250,000 available. But the overall concept is that idea of recognizing that these assets exist all over the planet and they don't have a home. And we have the opportunity to say, all right, they're Wyoming assets and they're subject to our jurisdiction. Of particular note is just the other day, the US Copyright Office said, yeah, we don't think AI-generated art can be copywritten, which is a strange decision. Somebody created it, whether you created the code or whether you're giving access to the code itself, to the copyright, somehow it needs to be copywritten. The copyright law talks about a person creating it. And so the Copyright Office said, well, the person didn't create this. It was an artificial intelligence that created it. So there's no way to register it. So you literally can't go to the federal government and register all of this new product that's being created through chatbot in terms of written material and DALL-E and other entities when it comes to visual art. Wyoming would have clear standing for registration of these as an owned asset. And at that point, the legal authority could allow you to enter into contracts and have some protection of the asset as your property. And that's the type of thing that this really offers, first of its kind in the country, obviously. So I'll stop and see if my colleagues have anything to add.
How about
Mr.
Chairman?
Yeah, I would just add, the bill does require that if you're registering an asset and you're an individual, that you have to be a resident. That's really key. And if you're a company that is registering the asset, then you actually have to be domiciled here in Wyoming. So you couldn't act through a third-party registered agent, or or just simply, you can't just have a pinned address for mail. You have to actually be domiciled here. So that's important to note in the bill. And then just a nuance on one of the reasons you might want to do this is to avail yourself of the Chancery Court. If your asset is worth less than $50,000, then you can go into a small claims court. But if your asset's worth more than $50,000, then it's an automatic, that is the jurisdiction, is the Chancery Court, which is probably, if not the number one reason, it'd be the top two reason why you would want to register your asset here. And the last thing I'll say, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but the way we modeled the Digital Asset Registration Act is by simply looking at our trademark laws. So we looked at Wyoming's trademark statutes. They were very much a copy and paste to move over to this as a model for what it should look like. So while it's a new concept, it's not foreign to Wyoming in terms of how the legalities of it are structured. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anything? Yeah, Senator Scott's got a question.
Mr. Chairman, looking on page 3, lines 4 through 7, the little subsection C there, nothing can be construed, any ownership or other rights. Let me ask a question, because that one, I said, what's all that about? These digital assets, am I right in thinking they are in fact property? And if you registered the property and said it's domiciled here, would you not also avail yourselves of all the protections that we have in the Wyoming and the US Constitution that applies to property? You can't be taken, et cetera, without just compensation, that sort of thing. This isn't in any way disparaging that, is it? I don't understand what that one was all about.
Okay, so with the cautionary that we're not going to be able to go blow by blow through the bill, we're just kind of giving them a chance to get their foot in the door. But with that, if you can answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and first of all, the senator is correct. It definitely brings along all of the property rights. That's the point of it, is to ensure that we're establishing it as property. What this is getting at is that registration does not confer ownership. It attests to ownership. And that's the key concept. You have to own it. There's a lot of other language here that says you have to provide an attestation that you are the owner of the digital asset. And in fact, you have to prove ownership of the digital asset, which is a relatively easy thing to do with digital assets. You have to show control of it. And in doing so, then you can register the asset. And the concept here is that registration does not confer ownership. You have to already be the owner. That's what it means.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott, I do want to get us out of here.
Okay.
If you don't mind. It's going to be fun on Thursday, I assure you. So I'm sorry, Ted. Representative Westron, did you have anything you wanted to add to this kind of foot in the door beginning?
Chairman Case, just briefly, I think kind of framing this in a large context, Property rights are super important. We all know that. The reality is we're entering a new age, artificial intelligence, all this type of technology where we have to, us as the legislature, our statutes have to adapt to these new and adapting technologies. And I think this is, when it comes to the question of ownership and ownership of these digital assets, these types of things have to happen. And so that's kind of ultimately in the macro picture why we are here considering this bill. So
Thank you so much. I think this was actually very useful and kind of tune our thinking in to think about getting here on Thursday. So I'm grateful to all of you. We will just carry the bill over till Thursday and we'll work it. I've got a couple of housekeeping things for the committee. I ended up with 4 of my own bills assigned to this committee by Mr. President. And I've got other individual bills, people that I'd like to get ahead, and you're all chairmen, so, or almost all of you are chairman. One's just a past speaker, but if you wanted to take one of the bills or you looked at them and you said, we could do that, and I might think we could switch it out. I just think it would be really terrible to have a kill case day in the Corporations Committee, and I want to avoid that. Yeah. No, they are in our wheelhouse, but take a look. One is limited liability company reporting. That has to do with the cowboy cocktail issue. Small customer electrical generation, that's net metering. There was EMS districts, that's a special districts bill that could go to labor health. Federal Political Action Committee reports. Committee, you remember that was the one where the people were here before, and it deals with your county. So those are bills with my name on them. I always have waited to the end to take my bills. Some of them are kind of important. There's 4. You know, if anybody wanted to take them, I'd love it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take a look. The only caution that I have is just stepping into a judiciary committee that has a lot of bills.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to take it and not be able to give,
Perfect.
enough attention to it, but I'll take a look.
Just take a look, that's all I ask. You know, and if there's trade involved, we could probably trade. So thank you, guys. Let's just get out of here. Thank you, and thanks for that liquor license leadership. I'm indifferent to whether we combine them or do 2 separate that are connected.
It felt like all along that we could pull those together, and I don't know why I feel that way. I'm good with them being separated. They're identical. But it also puts a limit in there. And if we don't limit the